Before the flood, before the prophets, there was one man who walked with God. His name was Enoch. He saw the watchers descend from the heavens, bringing forbidden knowledge that would corrupt the world. He witnessed the rise of the Nephilim, giants born of angels and mortals, creatures whose hunger knew no end. He journeyed through the seven heavens, stood before the throne of God, and returned with a message the world refused to hear. Judgment was coming. The flood would cleanse the earth, and the watchers would be bound for eternity. This is the untold story, the secrets they tried to bury, the Book of Enoch. What if I told you there was a secret book, older than the Bible itself, that reveals the true story of fallen angels, giant hybrids, and a man who walked with God? The Book of Enoch was so controversial that it was banned for centuries, yet its echoes are found throughout Scripture. Tonight we uncover the mysteries hidden in its pages, the Watchers, the Nephilim, and Enoch's journey into the heavens. But be warned. Once you hear these secrets, you'll never see the Bible the same way again. This isn't just an ancient text. It's a doorway to a forgotten world. Enoch's story begins long before the flood, when angels crossed a line that changed history forever. If you're drawn to Scripture's hidden depths, take a moment to subscribe. Your support helps bring these lost truths to light. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I read everyone. Now, let's step into Enoch's extraordinary journey. The world before the flood was different than anything we know today. Violence spread through the earth like a disease. People worshipped forbidden things, practiced dark arts, and turned away from the ways taught by Adam. The descendants of Cain built cities of stone, while the descendants of Seth tried to keep the old ways, but corruption seeped everywhere. In this world of spreading darkness, one man stood apart, Enoch, the seventh from Adam. Enoch lived differently. While others chased power and pleasure, he walked steadily toward something unseen. His days weren't filled with plotting or scheming, but with quiet observation of creation. The patterns of stars, the turn of seasons, the unspoken language of earth and sky. This attention prepared him for what was coming, though he didn't know it yet. Then one evening, as he prayed in solitude, everything changed. The presence that had hovered at the edges of his awareness suddenly became unmistakable. A voice spoke from the spaces between wind and silence, not in words exactly, but in thoughts that burned themselves into his mind. The voice called him by name, not just the name others knew, but the name of his truest self. Enoch fell face down in terror, as all mortal men do when standing before the eternal. Why Enoch? The text suggests it wasn't merit but mercy. Someone had to witness what was coming, to record the truth before the storm of judgment arrived. God chose someone undistracted by the world's corruption, yet familiar enough with its ways to speak plainly. Enoch wasn't a prophet because he sought visions. The visions sought him. For days afterward, he wrestled with doubt. The responsibility terrified him. Who was he to challenge the sons of Cain or warn the sons of Seth? The visions showed him things no human eyes should see, realms beyond earth, structures of creation, secrets that would later make kingdoms tremble. He felt small, unprepared, until the voice returned, not with rebuke but reassurance. Walk with me, and I will show you what must be. That's how it began, not with dramatic miracles or public displays, but with simple obedience unfolding day by day. Enoch learned to recognize when the divine presence drew near. He started recording what he saw and heard on scrolls of animal skin, words that would outlast civilizations. The more he wrote, the clearer his calling became. He was to be a messenger between realms, a scribe of the unseen. People noticed something different about him. His words carried weight. He could describe events before they happened, not with the vague mutterings of other seers, but with startling precision. Some listened. Most didn't. The impending judgment wasn't a popular conversation. But Enoch no longer feared their scorn. The man who once trembled at the voice from beyond now moved steadily toward his first unthinkable journey, beyond the sky, beyond time itself. What he encountered next would change how we understand angels, giants, and the origins of forbidden knowledge. Ancient texts describe fingernails like slate, eyes that glowed faintly in darkness, and voices that rumbled from cavernous chests. They inherited traits from their watcher fathers: strength to uproot oaks, reflexes faster than striking serpents, and an unsettling ability to sense fear like scent in the air. These weren't peaceful giants. As they matured, their appetites became insatiable. A single Nephilim could consume a farmer's entire harvest in one meal. When crops ran low, they turned to livestock, then to whatever else moved. Villages near their territories vanished overnight, leaving only grotesque remains. Survivors spoke of siblings or parents dragged screaming into hillside caves, of laughter echoing from cliffs where Nephilim played games with human bones. Their hybrid nature defied natural laws. Some could see through solid objects like their angelic ancestors. Others healed wounds within hours, making them nearly impossible to kill. The Book of Giants, a related text found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, describes Nephilim dreaming prophetic visions, though their twisted minds interpreted heavenly messages as threat. Their very existence polluted the land. Crops withered where they walked, and animals miscarried at their approach. Human resistance was futile. Warriors who ambushed them found spears snapping against unnatural skin. Pit traps barely reached their knees. Legends from multiple cultures tell of entire armies retreating from 6 or 7 Nephilim. Some tribes tried appeasement, offering tribute or even volunteers as distractions, but the giants always returned, hungrier. Desperate groups dug tunnels or hid in swamps, yet the Nephilim's heightened senses sniffed them out. Fear became constant, paralyzing, as generations lived knowing children wouldn't survive to adulthood. The Watchers lost control. Their half-angel sons developed wills of their own, forming warlord bands that carved territories across the ancient world. A hierarchy emerged, the strongest Nephilim commanding lesser ones, all competing for dwindling resources. Some turned on their fathers, raiding angelic strongholds to steal remaining celestial knowledge. Others warred against rival factions, their battles flattening forests and diverting rivers. The earth itself groaned under their weight, quakes becoming frequent as if creation strained to reject them. Divine patience had limits. As Nephilim numbers swelled past 20,000 according to Enoch's records, their violence reached a horrific peak. Accounts describe mass hunting expeditions where they herded humans like cattle, inventing gruesome esports with prisoners. The Watchers, now realizing their mistake, pleaded with Enoch to seek mercy, but the damage was irreversible. The Nephilim had become both symptom and cause of the world's corruption, forcing heaven's hand. When Enoch returned from his first heavenly journey, he bore warnings no one wanted to hear. The giants' days were numbered. Judgment would come not just for the Nephilim, but for those who spawned them and the human world complicit in their rise. Their very existence proved civilization had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. The floodwaters would erase them, yet oddly, they served a purpose. Their terror had exposed how far unchecked power could corrupt. This revelation marked a turning point for Enoch. Having witnessed Earth's ruin, he would next ascend through the 7 heavens to see realities beyond mortal suffering, where the fate of Watchers, Nephilim, and humanity alike were already being decided. What he learned there would redefine his mission entirely. Enoch knew the journey would change him. The angels who came for him gave no warnings, only instructions. Don't speak unless addressed, don't reach out to touch anything, and don't look directly at the throne until permitted. As they lifted him from the earth, his body felt simultaneously weightless and crushed by an unseen pressure. The first heaven opened like a curtain, tearing, a blinding flash, then sudden clarity. The initial shock wasn't the sights, but the sound. The first heaven resonated with a harmonic hum, the vibrations of countless angels moving between stations. Pillars of fire marked governance centers where records of earthly events were kept. Enoch saw his name inscribed on one scroll, being updated in real time. The ruling angels here, clad in silver, monitored human births and deaths with neither pity nor joy, only precision. When one noticed Enoch trembling, it explained dispassionately, "These are the mechanics of mortality." Higher realms intensified the revelation. Passing through the second heaven, Enoch witnessed the prison of rebellious angels, not the Watchers, but earlier deserters from heaven's ranks. Their forms flickered between humanoid and monstrous as chains of light pulsed against their flesh. The third heaven held twin realms, a paradise of towering trees where righteous souls awaited judgment, and a dark cavity where screams condensed into visible shadows. An archangel cautioned, "This is the destination, not the sentence." By the fourth heaven, time distorted. The sun and moon moved along tracks of liquid gold, orchestrated by angels who adjusted their speeds with dials of obsidian. Seasons were not random but meticulously timed, their celestial gears visible beneath translucent floors. Here, Enoch learned that weather patterns weren't natural phenomena but responses to human deeds. Droughts following mass betrayals, storms quelling riots before they began. The knowledge overwhelmed him. His human mind couldn't reconcile earthly chaos with this meticulous order. The fifth and sixth heavens collapsed Enoch's understanding of power. Legions of warrior angels trained endlessly in formations that folded space itself. Their weapons projected not blades but consequences, swings that manifested as plagues or blessings on earth. Michael, general of the hosts, showed Enoch how each watcher's sin had weakened celestial defenses, allowing dark entities to infiltrate human realms. The cost of their rebellion became horrifyingly clear. Every stolen secret had granted demonic forces new access points to Earth. Then the seventh heaven. No human language described it. The light didn't illuminate. It was thought-given form. The throne wasn't an object but a convergence point where all creation's laws originated. Enoch's vision failed until grace adjusted his eyes. What he perceived then wasn't a face but pure intent, distilled into something barely comprehensible as presence. No words passed between them. His entire life flashed before the throne, evaluated not as deeds but as ripples in a greater tapestry. The final revelation came as tactile knowledge burned into his hands. The celestial calendar. Its math defied earthly astronomy, 364 perfect days per year, divided into equal months of 30 days, with one day outside time. This was creation's true rhythm, hidden from humans since Eden's exile. The angels explained their purpose. Aligning human actions with celestial patterns maximized blessings and minimized disasters. When Enoch descended, his body glowed for days. The knowledge pressed against his skull. He now understood too much about consequence, about the direct link between human choices and cosmic repercussions. His scribe duties expanded beyond recording visions. He became a living bridge between heavenly order and earthly chaos. The man who entered the heavens no longer existed. What returned was something else, a being who had touched the machinery of existence and been altered by it. Earth felt smaller afterward. The squabbles of watchers and Nephilim now seemed like children's games beside what he'd witnessed. Yet urgency gripped him. The calendar's perfection highlighted how violently humanity had strayed from intended paths. He had precious little time before the flood's trigger would be pulled. The heavens had shown him the when. Now he needed to convince the doomed of the why. Earth's calendars were broken from the start. Ancient cultures struggled with mismatched lunar and solar cycles, years that didn't line up with seasons, harvests arriving weeks earlier each decade. The Sumerians crammed in extra months. The Egyptians fudged numbers. But Enoch returned from the heavens with a solution etched into his mind. A perfect 364-day solar calendar, divided into 4 equal seasons of exactly 91 days each. Unlike earthly attempts, this system had no gaps or overlaps. Each quarter contained 3 30-day months with 1 intercalary day bridging seasons, a day outside normal time. Temple scroll fragments found near the Dead Sea confirmed Jewish sects used this model, structuring sacrifices and festivals around its precision. The math was elegant. 52 weeks make a year. Every date fell on the same weekday annually. New moons are aligned with specific dates. Crops planted on designated days yielded more. Modern archaeology backs its accuracy. A 2019 study of ancient Nilometer records showed Egyptian floods peaked consistently on the 15th day of the 4th month in Enoch's calendar, something local astronomers couldn't predict with their 365-day system. Dendrochronology reveals drought cycles matching its 7-year and 49-year jubilee patterns. Even today, Ethiopian churches use a derivative of this calendar, their new year falling on September 11, one of the 4 seasonal transition days Enoch described. The implications went beyond farming. Celestial events became predictable. Eclipses cluster in 7-year cycles. Solstices marked not just sunlight shifts but spiritual thresholds, days when the veil between realms thinned. Properly observed feast days created alignment with angelic worship cycles, something the Book of Jubilees emphasizes. Get the calendar wrong, and rituals lose power. Sabbaths became merely symbolic rather than tapping into heaven's rhythm. Why did humans lose this knowledge? Enoch's texts hint that after the flood, Noah preserved the calendar orally during his 350-year post-Diluvian life. But within generations, Babylonian influences corrupted it. The new moon sightings required for lunar calendars introduced human error. Political rulers preferred mutable systems. Adjustable timelines meant controllable populations. Power favored confusion over precision. The deadliest consequence was prophetic blindness. Enoch's calendar contained built-in warning systems, specific years when collective sin would trigger cosmic responses. Without it, civilizations missed judgment cues. The Watchers, ironically, had taught corrupted astronomy that obscured these patterns. Their hybrid children accelerated the disconnect, warping timekeeping with demonic numerology disguised as advanced science. Scholars debate whether the Qumran community's discovery of Enoch's calendar around 150 BCE was mere archaeology or divine rediscovery. Their Dead Sea Scrolls contain detailed instructions for restoring its use before the last days. Modern attempts to apply it reveal startling correlations, major historical events clustering around its warning intervals with eerie consistency. Enoch never claimed credit for the calendar. He presented it as borrowed knowledge, a temporary loan from the heavens to realign humanity with creation's pulse. Its perfection underscored how far Earth had drifted. Now armed with this tool, Enoch's next mission became undeniable, to warn both Watchers and humans that their borrowed time was running out according to the very celestial clock they'd ignored. The calendar wasn't just a system, it was a countdown. Enoch delivered his prophecies on mountain peaks and in city squares, adapting his message for each audience. To human crowds, he described coming floods with such vivid detail that farmers could smell the rain, houses collapsing under water pressure, soil layers sliding away like shedding skin. For the Watchers, he quoted celestial court transcripts. "You were sent to instruct, not to fornicate, to observe, not to overthrow." Some humans scoffed. Their crops were flourishing, their cities thriving. Others grew violent, throwing stones that miraculously fell short. A few families quietly began moving livestock to higher ground. The Watchers reacted differently based on their remaining conscience. A faction led by Shemiaza mocked Enoch at replicating his flood predictions with parodies about firestorms or falling sky. Another group, noticing how accurately he recounted their secret heavenly trials, panicked. These penitents begged him to mediate. They offered revelations about hidden angelic knowledge if he'd petition heaven for mercy. Enoch refused their bargains but recorded their confessions, creating the first eyewitness accounts of the rebellion. Meanwhile, their Nephilim sons interpreted the warnings as challenges, boasting they'd tower above any floodwaters. Enoch's predictions contained chilling specifics. He announced the flood would begin on the 17th day of the second month, not based on earthly weather patterns but celestial alignment. The water wouldn't merely rise, it would burst from underground reservoirs and crash through atmospheric barriers simultaneously. He described how the ark's construction must follow sacred geometry to survive the pressure, dimensions that Noah later replicated precisely. Most disturbingly, he revealed the flood was just phase 1. A coming purge by fire would complete the judgment cycle. For 120 years, the warnings continued. Enoch's voice grew raspy from constant proclamation. His sandals wore thin from walking between human settlements and Watcher enclaves. He watched children who first heard his message grow old and die, their skepticism hardening with age. Agricultural cycles kept everyone distracted. When storms came and went without catastrophe, complacency set in. Even the Watchers relaxed, assuming heaven had forgiven or forgotten. Only Noah maintained vigilance, building supplies in secret for years before receiving Ark blueprints. As the final decade counted down, desperate Watchers tried loopholes. Some ordered human followers to craft metal charms with angelic names, fraudulent passports for avoiding judgment. Others attempted to repent by force, binding layers of righteous deeds over their corruption like fresh plaster on rotting walls. A radical faction even plotted to storm heaven physically, teaching Nephilim how to stack mountains as siege ramps. Their efforts only deepened their condemnation. Enoch privately struggled with the coming horror. Walking through bustling markets, he'd imagine the stalls empty, the laughter silenced. Some nights he pleaded for extensions, only to be shown visions of what unchecked Nephilim would achieve in another century, entire continents reduced to blood-soaked playgrounds. His hardest moment came when pronouncing judgment on pregnant watcher wives. Their half-human children couldn't inherit the flood's promise. The final warnings took on new urgency. Enoch started counting down by seasons, then months, then weeks. Families that mocked him now watched uneasily as migratory birds changed patterns. Underground springs tasted metallic months before the deluge. On New Year's Day, the calendar's only floating date, Noah entered the ark alone. For 7 days, nothing happened. Crowds gathered to jeer until the morning when dirt roads turned slick with water rising upward through the soil. Noah's survival wasn't about superior morality, but precise obedience. While others debated flood metaphors, he'd measured lumber. The difference between salvation and obliteration came down to who treated divine warnings as mathematical certainties rather than poetic suggestions. As the first drops fell, Enoch was already gone, translated to heaven before witnessing the drowning world he'd tried to save. But before departing, he'd delivered one final message about those who caused the catastrophe, ensuring their punishment would outlast even the floodwaters. The watchers finally understood their mistake when the first floodwaters burst from the ground. They came to Enoch in panic, their once glorious forms now heavy with earthly corruption. Some prostrated themselves, others clutched at his robes, all begging him to intercede. But the sentence had already been pronounced in the heavenly court. Enoch recited it word for word. "You will remain bound in the valleys of the earth until the day of final judgment." Their punishment was precise and inescapable. Michael and his angels descended with chains forged from the same material as the firmament. Not merely physical restraints, but cosmological inhibitors that severed their connection to cosmic energy. Each watcher was dragged to one of 4 specially prepared chasms near Jerusalem, the Dead Sea, and other spiritually significant locations. Ancient texts describe how these pits were inverted replicas of heaven's throne room, mocking their failed rebellion. The binding process revealed the depth of divine justice. The angels didn't merely throw the watchers into darkness, they carefully positioned each rebel according to culpability. Leaders like Shemiah faced downward, forced to watch their Nephilim offspring perish in the flood. Those who taught the darkest arts had their eyes sealed shut, their mouths stitched with celestial thread to prevent even whispered spells, yet they couldn't die. Their semi-divine nature became a curse, sustaining them through centuries of immobility. Enoch watched with conflicted emotions. Part of him pitied beings who once stood before God's throne. He recognized their genuine terror as the earth began quaking around their prison sites. But he also remembered villages where children disappeared into Nephilim cooking pits where mothers drowned themselves to avoid bearing hybrid babies. The Watchers' tears didn't erase 2 centuries of unleashed horrors. The spiritual mechanics of their confinement were deliberate. Their underground positioning created geomantic fault lines, places where demonic energy would concentrate for millennia. Later cultures built temples over these sites without knowing why certain locations felt thin between worlds. The imprisoned watchers became anchors for Earth's spiritual ecosystem, their anguish unintentionally maintaining cosmic balance. Even in punishment, they served creation's design. Archangel Michael explained this would establish precedent. Future rebellions would know consequences, weren't temporary. The binding also protected humanity. With watchers immobilized, their stolen knowledge gradually faded from human memory. Technologies of domination became folktales, then myths. Only echoes remained in stories like Prometheus or the Tuatha De Danann, powerful beings who gifted dangerous advancements. As the floodwaters rose, trapped watchers sensed their children drowning. The fathers who once boasted of Nephilim conquests now screamed into the earth, their voices vibrating through tectonic plates. Some claim these cries still emerge as low-frequency rumbles in desert caves. Their suffering had purpose. It became a warning signal to any angel considering earthly intervention. Enoch left the prison sites as rain thickened the air. He carried no satisfaction, only solemn certainty about heaven's justice. The Watcher's fate proved no being, however powerful, could manipulate creation without consequence. Their story would warn generations about crossing boundaries between realms. But Enoch's journey wasn't finished. Having witnessed judgment's certainty, he prepared for a departure unlike any other human had experienced. The man who walked between worlds would soon take one final step beyond mortal life entirely. Enoch knew his time on earth was ending. In his final days, he gathered his remaining scrolls, those not burned by skeptics or stolen by watcher cults, and entrusted them to Methuselah with careful instructions. The air around him pulsed strangely, as if reality itself grew thin. Those who still followed him noticed he cast no shadow at noon, and his footprint sometimes glowed faintly at dusk. Children would chase these fading marks, unaware they witnessed a man being slowly untethered from creation. And on the 365th day of his 365th year, a number mirroring the flawed solar cycle he worked to correct, Enoch climbed a hillside alone. The moment wasn't dramatic. No thunder cracked as he reached the summit. Instead, a simple vortex of golden particles enveloped him, lifting his body inch by inch like a prayer ascending. Those watching from villages below saw only a sudden flare of light, then emptiness where he stood. Subsequent searches found no clothing fragments, no drop belongings, just scorched grass in a perfect circle. This wasn't death in any ordinary sense. The Hebrew text uses lakach, meaning taken rather than die. Ancient commentators noted the phrasing mirrored Elijah's later departure, establishing a pattern. When heaven needs permanent witnesses, it preserves them outside mortal limits. Early rabbinic writings speculate that Enoch's body was transformed into the archangel Metatron, though his book remains silent on this. What's clear is that he bypassed Sheol entirely, the underground holding place all other humans entered before judgment. The Book of Enoch describes his destination as an intermediate heaven, higher than the Watcher's prison realms but below the seventh heaven's throne. There, he continued recording events as heaven's appointed scribe. Some texts suggest he oversees an archive where every human deed is catalogued alongside its cosmic consequences. Second Temple period writings claim he occasionally intercedes for penitent souls, using his unique perspective as both human and celestial to argue for mercy. Back on Earth, reactions split sharply. Noah's family treated the disappearance as confirmation of Enoch's prophecies, accelerating ark construction. Watcher cults spun elaborate theories about his abduction by rival angels. Ordinary villagers alternated between fear and indifference. Some left offerings at the hillside, others ploughed it under within weeks. Within 3 generations, most assumed he'd died naturally. Only Methuselah's meticulous record keeping preserved the truth. The departure's theological implications rippled through history. Here was proof that human biology wasn't inherently incompatible with divine realms. Early Christian writers like Tertullian pointed to Enoch as evidence that resurrection bodies could indeed function in heavenly dimensions. Jewish mystics saw his transformation as a roadmap for ascetic enlightenment, though they cautioned against expecting similar transportation. Enoch's ongoing role explains why his writings carry such weight. Unlike prophets who received temporary visions, he became a permanent resident of the realms he described. When the Book of Enoch mentions astronomical details or angelic hierarchies, it's not speculation but field notes from an eternal witness. This also explains the text's persistence. Despite suppression, copies resurface continually because the author himself may have influenced their preservation. Those closest to him felt the absence strangely. Methuselah reported dreams where Enoch delivered messages about flood preparations. Noah often glanced upward while building the ark, as if expecting approving nods from the cloud. Even the imprisoned watchers sensed the shift. Their whispered debates about Enoch's fate became part of underground lore, warping into bizarre cults that persisted for millennia. Yet amid all this, one question lingered. Where were Enoch's original writings hidden? The answer would surface centuries later in the unlikeliest of places, preserved by people who barely understood what they guarded. The story of how his words survived against all odds reveals just how determined heaven was to keep this testimony alive. For 3 centuries after Enoch's departure, his writings circulated freely among Jewish communities. The Dead Sea Scrolls reveal Essene monks studied his prophecies alongside Torah scrolls. Early Christian leaders like Tertullian quoted them as scripture. Jude 1:14 directly references Enoch's prediction about God coming with thousands of saints. Then something changed. By the 4th century AD, rabbis and bishops began removing it from approved texts. The reasons weren't simple censorship, they reflected deeper theological battles. The objections centered on three problems. First, Enoch's detailed angelology conflicted with emerging monotheistic orthodoxy. Descriptions of 200 rebellious watchers sounded too much like polytheism to rabbis streamlining Judaism after the temple's destruction. Second, the calendar's 364-day system undermined authority. If anyone could calculate sacred dates without priests, hierarchies crumbled. Finally, the Watcher's sexual sins made uncomfortable reading for ascetic early Christians. A cleric named Hilary of Poitiers warned that it gave a too vivid an imagination of wickedness. While Western churches purged Enoch's texts, Ethiopian Coptic Christians preserved them. Isolated by geography and proud of their Solomonic heritage, they guarded complete copies in the sacred language of Ge'ez. Monks at Lake Tana monasteries copied the books generation after generation, unaware Europe had forgotten them. Their version contains details missing from Dead Sea fragments, entire sections about astronomy and angelic movements that scholars wouldn't rediscover for 1,500 years. The New Testament echoes Enoch everywhere, once you know how to listen. Peter's epistles reference imprisoned spirits from Noah's time. Paul's cosmic Christ mirrors Enoch's Son of Man visions. Revelation's throne room owes more to Enoch's 7 heavens than Ezekiel's wheeled chariot. Early Christians knew these texts, but after Constantine, aligning doctrine required minimizing uncomfortable sources. Only peripheral communities like the Bogomils kept the full tradition alive underground. Modern rediscovery began accidentally. In 1773, Scottish explorer James Bruce risked malaria to fetch 3 Ge'ez manuscripts from Ethiopia. Scholars initially dismissed them as medieval forgeries until Dead Sea Scroll fragments matched passages verbatim in 1948. Suddenly, a book written centuries before Christ existed again in nearly original form. Carbon dating later confirmed that some Enochic material predated Daniel by 200 years. Today, scholars parse Enoch's books differently. Jewish academics study how Second Temple Judaism absorbed and then rejected apocalypticism. Anthropologists track how Watcher myths evolved into global flood legend. Even secular historians admit these texts explain cultural shifts, like why Bronze Age civilizations abruptly abandoned megalithic astronomy. The Vatican's recent digitization of Ethiopian manuscripts suggests shifting attitudes towards suppressed texts. The book's endurance matters because it answers questions Bible readers have whispered for millennia. Where did evil originate if not Eden? Why do Genesis 6's sons of God disappear after one cryptic verse? How did Noah know precise flood timing? Enoch provides eyewitness testimony to events that Moses only summarized. Its exclusion wasn't about falsehood but discomfort. These visions revealed too much about heaven's messy relationship with earth. Now cross-referenced with Sumerian and Hittite texts, Enoch's account looks less like fantasy and more like fractured history. Satellite imaging shows flood sediment layers matching his predicted date. DNA research confirms sudden population bottlenecks around 2000 BC. The book survives because it speaks to something deeper than orthodoxy, the human need to understand forces beyond our control. What Vatican librarian or medieval monk ever imagined their suppressed text would outlive empires? That college students today would debate Nephilim genetics, that filmmakers and archaeologists reconstruct Watcher strongholds. Enoch's message transcends its keepers. Like the imprisoned Watchers themselves, these stories couldn't be buried forever. They were destined to resurface when humanity needed warnings about ambition, corruption, and the cost of crossing boundaries. As modern science grapples with AI and genetic engineering, Enoch's themes feel unsettlingly relevant. The question isn't why this book was hidden, it's why we keep rediscovering it at civilization's crisis points. Perhaps because few texts so starkly show what happens when beings play creator without wisdom. The Watchers forgot their role as observers. Their children became monsters. And one man's faithful record survived to ask, will we learn from their pride? Enoch's ancient warnings about fallen angels and genetic corruption didn't end with the flood. They echo in our labs and boardrooms today. Scientists splice genes to create glowing plants and cloned animals. Tech giants harvest data like the Watchers harvested souls, building towers of influence that reach into every home. The parallels are uncomfortable. We've replaced celestial secrets with AI and biotechnology, but the pride remains the same. When Silicon Valley speaks of a disrupting human biology or achieving immortality through digital uploads, we're hearing the same temptation that doomed the Watchers, the urge to erase divine boundaries. The spiritual warfare Enoch described never stopped. Those imprisoned Watchers still influence the world through the fault lines where they were bound, places where sudden violence erupts, where addiction spreads like plagues, where entire generations fall into collective delusion. Modern exorcism manuals reference Enoch's descriptions of how fallen angels operate. Through systems, not just individuals. A corrupt government isn't just bad leadership. It's often a spiritual stronghold built on centuries of compounded rebellion. The book's revival now isn't a coincidence. Heaven administers warnings in cycles, and we've entered another age of boundary testing. Yet Enoch's story offers more than doom. His journey proves ordinary people can navigate supernatural danger unharmed. Notice how he moved through warring factions, Watchers begging for help, Nephilim threatening violence, angels executing judgment, yet remained untouched. His protection wasn't magical armor, but alignment. Walking with God meant matching his rhythm to heaven's timing. The 364-day calendar wasn't just astronomy, it was a survival guide. Today's equivalent might be something as simple as disconnecting from toxic digital streams or rejecting shortcuts that compromise conscience. Protection begins where obedience intersects with discernment. Enoch's transformation holds another key. He didn't start as a fearless visionary, but as a man who trembled at divine contact. His growth came through steady increments, recording small revelations before handling cosmic secrets. Modern spirituality often craves instant enlightenment, but authentic encounters leave you speechless long before they make you eloquent. True revelation always starts with dismantling pride. Those who claim easy mastery of spiritual realms usually understand them least. The hopeful twist in Enoch's story is God's persistence. Despite global corruption, heaven sought one faithful witness. Despite the Watchers' betrayal, their imprisonment stabilized creation. Even the Nephilim's violence served a purpose, exposing evil so starkly that justice became inevitable. Today's chaos may follow the same pattern. Every exposed scandal, every collapsed empire, every humbled celebrity could be part of a corrective process older than Babylon. Enoch's greatest reassurance was the cosmic courtroom scene where no rebellion went unaddressed. The Watchers thought they'd escaped consequences until chains materialized. Modern tyrants and traffickers operate under the same delusion, but the calendar still turns. The math remains exact. What happened to the Watchers proves that no amount of secreted wealth or political armor can delay justice indefinitely. His example also suggests survival isn't about retreat, but engagement. Notice he didn't hide from the Watchers. He confronted them with their crimes. He didn't ignore the Nephilim, but documented their atrocities for heaven's records. In an era of digital overwhelm, we're tempted to either obsess over evil or ignore it completely. Enoch charts a third path. See clearly, speak truthfully, but let heaven handle sentencing. The book's preservation, despite suppression, sends its message. Truth has escape routes through Ethiopian monasteries, teenage hackers, and grandmothers whispering prayers. Systems designed to bury light often become its conduits. That encrypted file, that banned book passed hand to hand, that viral video exposing corruption, they're part of the same pattern Enoch represents. Heaven keeps receipts. Enoch's legacy whispers that the most dangerous knowledge isn't forbidden tech or angelic secrets, but this: God watches the Watchers. He measures every crossed line, and he still transports faithful messengers beyond the reach of floodwaters when their work is done. Our role isn't to avert collapse, but to walk through it with clean hands, recording what we see, knowing someone preserves the records. The story of Enoch proves heaven still speaks to those who listen. In an age of noise and distraction, his example cuts through, walking steadily with God while empires rise and fall around him. The Watchers thought they could reshape creation, but one faithful man's quiet obedience outlasted their rebellion. That choice remains before us today. Will we chase forbidden knowledge like the fallen angels, or walk the narrow path of wisdom? Enoch's journey shows truth survives every attempt to bury it. His voice still whispers across centuries. The divine clock keeps perfect time. Justice comes, light endures, and those who seek will always find.